Thank you so much for joining us on this Summer Melt webinar. I am Amy Dietzman. I'm the lead for the training and professional development team at Tutor.com, and I am going to be your moderator today. I'm joined by our wonderful presenters, Jenna Gilio and Jess Rotheiser, and they are going to address this really hot topic about losing students over the summer. Colleges and universities have asked us several times if we could share some of our tips and strategies for engaging students and supporting them throughout the summer. So without any further ado, I'd love to pass it over to Jenna to get us started.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jenna. Thank you for the introduction, Amy. I'm going to kick us off by giving you a quick peek at our agenda today before we get started. So today we're going to begin by defining summer melt. Then we'll analyze some potential causes. We're going to identify which students are most susceptible. We'll examine some strategies that schools can implement to combat melt. And finally, we'll outline some practical tips to help students survive their first semester. So, what is summer melt? The National College Attainment Network's working definition of summer melt is the phenomenon of college-intending students who have applied to, been accepted by, and made a deposit to a college or university, but fail to matriculate to that college or any other in the fall following their high school graduation. According to research by Benjamin Castleman and Lindsay Page, who are co-authors of Summer Melt, this phenomenon impacts up to 1 in 5 high school graduates. But before we can talk about how to stop melt, we must first identify what's causing it. The most common causes of melt include finances, general overwhelm regarding the matriculation process, lack of support or guidance, and fear or anxiety. So let's take a closer look into how each of these stumbling blocks can lead students to melt. We'll start with arguably the most obvious cause, finances. It's no secret that college is expensive. Included in a student's budget is the cost of tuition, student fees, books, supplies, housing or rent, food, transportation, entertainment, and more. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, these costs have more than doubled in the past 30 years without matching increases in mean income. And Pell Grants, unfortunately, only cover about 29% of the average cost of a 4-year public college. Too often, this form of melt is enabled by students' lack of knowledge about the resources available to them. There are a variety of supports and programs like grants, scholarships, work-study programs, and even free financial counseling at students' disposal. Unfortunately, without effective guidance or direction, students lose out on these opportunities. It's also worth noting that the financial aid process is extremely complex. With more than 100 questions on the FAFSA and a rigorous verification process, each obstacle stands as a barrier between students and the financial aid that they're eligible for. It's no wonder that the FAFSA application rates have been declining, particularly among low-income students who need the aid most. In fact, according to the National Center for Education Statistics, only about 65% of all high school seniors complete a FAFSA. And of the students that elected not to complete it, 32% thought that they would not be eligible or qualify for aid. 23% reported not having enough information about how to complete a FAFSA, and 15% didn't know that they could complete a FAFSA at all. This number drops even further for low-income students at just 55% completion. In responding to a 2021 survey, 30% of both first generation and low-income students said completing the FAFSA was difficult. They cited lack of parental support, difficulty acquiring tax information, confusing questions, income changes, and citizenship status as barriers. What's more, almost 40% of first-generation students and 37% of low-income students said they completed the FAFSA by themselves, compared to just 11% of higher-income students. It's no surprise then that $2.3 billion in available federal aid is left unused each year. Without sufficient support or guidance to complete the FAFSA, students can't receive the aid that they need to overcome the financial obstacles preventing them from matriculating. But simply completing the FAFSA is only half of the battle. Verification melt occurs when students who are selected for verification fail to complete the process and thus are ineligible to receive a Pell Grant or any other form of federal aid. For the 21-22 school year, 18% of students that filed a FAFSA were selected for verification. Of these, 66.3% ended up receiving subsidized aid. Compare this to the 73.5% of students that were not flagged for verification and still received aid, and you'll see a 7.2% rate of what's called verification melt. So let's move on to another leading cause of melt, overwhelm. Among the laundry list of items students must consider and plan for throughout the matriculation process include calculating the cost of college and budgeting, financial aid, signing up for and attending orientation, immunizations, placement tests, dealing with paperwork like housing forms, administrative deadlines, registering for classes, transportation, and even access to the internet during the matriculation process. So no pressure, right? Overwhelm is a feeling that we're all familiar with. I know when my personal to-do list gets too long, I struggle to keep up with even trivial tasks like switching over the laundry or setting the trash out. All that to say, this list is a lot to expect from a recent graduate in such a short time frame, and the stakes are high. Unfortunately, the summer before college, though a critical time, is also when many students lose the support networks that they built in high school. Though they may need guidance when it comes to paying for tuition, requesting financial aid, or finding affordable housing, these students may have few places to turn to for help. Those who are first in their family to attend college can't necessarily rely on their older siblings or parents' experience. These families haven't been through the process, and they aren't always aware that there's more to do after a student has been accepted. According to the American School Counselor Association, the student to school counselor ratio is over 424 to 1 nationally. Because of this discrepancy, school counselors often lack the capacity to provide the affordability planning and financial aid coaching students need. And while some students might form reliable connections to teachers and counselors at their school, they too can become vulnerable to melt when that connection is lost as classes end. To further illustrate the impact of this form of melt, researchers found that institutions offering college-intending graduates just 2 to 3 hours of additional summer support increased enrollment by 3 to 4 percentage points overall and 8 percentage points among low-income students. This just goes to show that a little support really can go a long way. With the weight of managing finances and a stressful to-do list, in some cases with very little support, it's no surprise that a large contributor of melt is fear and anxiety. Regardless of how prepared a student is, entering into a new environment can be scary. And for many students, it's their first time away from home. When faced with levels of independence they may have never experienced, it's only natural that students would be feeling a little bit anxious. Amidst all these changes, it's also a time of big decisions. What do they want to major in? How are they going to get involved? Who are they going to hang out with? And how are they going to manage their new workload? College level courses are often more rigorous than what students may have grown accustomed to in high school. And this adjustment can feel incredibly daunting, especially without the same level of support. And all too often, students form doubts around whether they're even suited for college, or in other words, college material. This feeling can especially arise at times when there are a growing number of tasks on their to-do list, or when they're feeling incapable of tackling the hurdles before them. If students don't see college as possible, they may lack the confidence required to face the barriers that come with heading into their first year of college. So now that we've analyzed some of the common causes of MELT, let's take a look at which students are most susceptible. According to researchers Benjamin Castleman and Lindsay Page, summer MELT is most prevalent for low-income students who are often first in their family to pursue higher education, students who attend large urban school districts, and community college-bound students, with attrition rates as high as 40% among these populations. These factors are not mutually exclusive and often intersect with one another, leading to complex barriers in achieving their college aspirations. In fact, only 16% of low-income students will earn a bachelor's degree by the time they're 24, compared to 62% of high-income students. As explained by College Now, a college access organization based in Cleveland, Ohio, first-generation and low-income students often do not have the social capital or support system when they embark on the college-going process. Despite good intentions among friends and family members, the system is set up to support those who already know how to navigate it. College visits, completing admissions applications, applying for financial aid, etc., are things that are assumed everyone does or knows to do as they prepare for life after high school. Let's take a look at a couple of case studies to further illustrate this idea. According to the Strategic Data Project in Fort Worth Independent School District, summer MELT has proved a significant issue. In a study conducted by SDP, approximately 80% of FWISD graduates planned to attend college, and among those who had applied and been accepted by at least one college, only 52% ended up enrolling for the fall. Furthermore, graduates of FWISD who were enrolled in the free and reduced lunch program had a MELT rate of 56%, compared to only 25% for students not enrolled in the program. Additionally, summer MELT rates for Latinx and Black students were 59% and 41% respectively, compared to just 19% for white graduates. An additional case study by Lancaster School District in Pennsylvania demonstrates how the COVID-19 pandemic has contributed to summer MELT. The school district is comprised of about 60% Hispanic students and 16% Black students, and the city has been described as one of the nation's refugee capitals. Though enrollment at four-year colleges remained stable for Lancaster students throughout the course of the pandemic, the enrollment at two-year colleges dropped by nearly half, which suggests that students who would have otherwise pursued community college had to rethink their plans. This phenomenon can likely be explained by the financial insecurity that has plagued families as a result of the pandemic, as well as community colleges' slower return to in-person learning. This study and the pandemic at large has brought about a new factor that will be a likely contributor of summer MELT for low-income students: the lure of high-paying jobs. Recent high school graduates who have aspirations to enroll in and attend college are electing to take time off from school to work and save up money. With the rising costs of college and the financial hardship brought about by the pandemic, it makes sense that this would be an attractive option for lower income students. Though many well-intending high school graduates say they'll eventually go to college after taking time off, The research indicates it's unlikely that they will. According to the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center, in 2018, of the number of graduating seniors who chose not to go to college immediately, only 3% enrolled the following year. A college education is arguably one of the most powerful engines for economic mobility. A college graduate is 2.2 times more likely to be employed and will earn 1.8 times more income than a high school graduate. Yet, as we established, only 16% of students from low-income families will graduate college, which begs the question, what can be done to combat summer melt and encourage matriculation? And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jess, and she is going to share some practical strategies and tips that you might consider to help ensure your students arrive on campus in the fall.
Thank you, Jenna. So ultimately, the burden of summer melt should fall on colleges and universities. Yes, students have responsibilities over the summer to ensure they make it to campus in the fall, but college and universities should be doing everything they can to make this transition as easy as possible. And Jenna talked about how finances can be the biggest barrier. Students and their families need support with the financial aspect of college, especially the FAFSA. Some high schools do a great job supporting students in this aspect, but not all of them do. So what can you do? You can try hosting financial aid workshops for students throughout the year, particularly during the FAFSA application window of October to June. Also consider hosting workshops for students that have been selected for verification. Explain the process of applying for financial aid, both federally and through your institution-specific scholarships, and make sure to leave lots of time for questions. You can also provide students access to counselors, and Jenna shared that statistic earlier that just 2 to 3 hours over the summer of support goes a really long way. So again, one of the main reasons students don't complete the FAFSA or their verification is that they don't have the required information or they don't know where to find this information. So being able to talk through the process and have access to expert advice is going to be extremely valuable to students and their families. Something else you can do is standardize your financial aid offer letters. So deadlines and next steps should be extremely clear and obvious to help eliminate confusion and ensure students can receive aid and meet their enrollment deadlines. So if you're not sure how students and families are interpreting your financial aid letters, you can consider gathering feedback through a survey after students accept or decline their aid. And lastly, many families also think that they're good to go after filling out the FAFSA. They filled it out, they sent it in, they're done. But there are a lot of steps and deadlines after that that can be easily missed. So you can help with this by sending text or email reminders about other steps after the FAFSA before common deadlines. So things like accepting or declining aid, signing promissory notes, completing the entrance counseling, and so on. Another cool resource that many institutions partner with is Raise Me. And this is a website where students can earn micro scholarships for their accomplishments throughout high school, like earning an A or being the captain of their sports team. And the site actually also released a framework where institutions can also give micro scholarships for completing various enrollment or onboarding tasks, like attending a financial counseling appointment, meeting with an academic advisor, completing important forms, and so on. So the site and these micro scholarships are based on nudge theory, that students just need a gentle nudge to help get them through to their first day. And in this case, the nudge would be small financial aid incentives that can add up to a lot of support. All right, text campaigns. So according to Pew Research, 95% of teens have access to a smartphone. So reaching students through a text campaign is an easy way to get information in front of students through a device that is already most likely glued to their hand. You can send reminders to students around important pre-matriculation deadlines or send fun updates to get students excited about coming to campus in the fall. Best practices for a text campaign include sending 4 to 5 texts per month and sending them on students' schedules. So the best times for a text are early afternoon through early evening, right after students get out of school. So let's look at a couple of case studies, and Jenna already talked about Fort Worth ISD, so we'll talk about them again. So these 2 case studies we're going to look at have been done by or in partnership with school districts, but could definitely be translated to higher ed institutions, or again, you could consider partnering with school districts that feed into your institution. So Fort Worth ISD rolled out a program called Summer Pace, and this was a school district-led support program. It was staffed by district counselors, teachers, and other school staff. This was a very personal text campaign where staff members provided financial aid support, social emotional support, help completing paperwork, and other enrollment tasks students may have been struggling with. As a result, participants of the text campaign were 5% more likely to enroll on time. Another case study is a partnership between UAspire and Boston Public Schools for the program of Summer College Connect. So in this program, advisors utilized telephone calls, text messages, and Facebook outreach to provide advising, award letter analysis, and just offer encouragement and advice to students. Participants in this program were 8% more likely to persist into their second year of college. And low-income students saw the largest impact of this program. They were 13% more likely to persist into their second year of college. So personalizing text campaigns a little bit can go a long way. You could also take it a step further with some AI with a chatbot. So here's another case study. Georgia State University, their administration worked with AdmitHub to design an AI chatbot to guide students through pre-matriculation milestones. So student progress towards enrollment was tracked, and the chatbot sent customized messages to students based on where they were in the process. So as an example, only students who did not yet complete the FAFSA would get the outreach message where they could learn about the importance of applying for financial aid and get step-by-step guidance if they so chose. By utilizing AI, GSU was able to be proactive about summer melt. So the AI system learned as well through interaction with the students and could figure out whether students simply needed a reminder, or they were also able to identify those that needed more detailed instructions or help. And also provided a way for students to get their questions answered. So questions like, can I have a car on campus? Or where can I find a work study job? The results of this case study were awesome. So GSU saw a 21% decrease in summer melt compared to previous cohorts, and they did it with significantly fewer staff. A lower tech option is providing a customized transition checklist to students. So you'll want to make sure that if you provide a checklist, that the document is thorough, but not too overwhelming. So reduce the amount of text on the checklist by including links to web pages where students can find more information, or custom links to portals where the tasks can be completed. Another great idea is adding contact information for people or departments that can help students if they get stuck on a task or have questions. So helpline phone numbers or email addresses. Orientation is also a huge and crucial piece of the puzzle. So one of the challenges, of course, is getting students to orientation. Hopefully the strategies we've suggested thus far can help communicate information about orientation to students to help get them through the door. It's also helpful beforehand to share why orientation is important and what the goal of your institution's orientation is. To have an effective orientation as well, there are often steps that students need to complete prior to coming. These could include submitting immunization forms, submitting a housing application if they're going to live on campus, and so on. And It's also a great idea to share the course catalog with students ahead of time. This will get them excited about the different classes that are available to them. You know, students are used to standard core classes of math, science, English, and so on. So seeing a fun elective course like Texas State University, they have a class called Harry Styles and the Cult of Celebrity. A class like that might get students excited to get started. Many institutions also do a family orientation, so a second orientation or a piece of orientation that the family can attend together. Families are one of the biggest support systems for students. So, you know, they don't just go off to college and leave everyone they know behind, usually. So helping families understand what the next few years of their student's life are going to be like will help everyone set expectations and plan accordingly. You could also share a list of common questions ahead of time that students can ask at orientation. So while they're there, they're going to have the opportunity to interact with a lot of different people. And so this is a great way for students to get insight and advice from a diverse group. And of course, while you're at orientation, don't forget to sprinkle in a little bit of fun. College is hard work, but it's also a lot of fun. Students will be overwhelmed with information throughout orientation and before and after orientation as well. So just taking some time to build community and have some fun together will go a long way. Let's take a look at a couple more case studies. So orientation can be a little bit more challenging for community colleges in a lot of cases. So the Community College of Rhode Island had a program called the College Crusade. So this program worked with students throughout high school to help them be on track and college ready. But they noticed a problem. Nearly 60% of their students were falling off track during the summer between high school and college. And one of the biggest issues was orientation, or rather a poorly attended orientation. So they started out by having one 4 to 5 hour event, and they decided to switch to a welcome dinner in May, followed by 4 summer sessions or forums covering different topics. So these sessions also featured current students and allowed them to share their perspective, which prospective students have reportedly found extremely valuable. And the community college continued to work with that College Crusade program to ensure students had access to advisors over the summer by having them on campus twice a month to help with the transition. So these actions combined led to a 10% decrease in MELT over just 3 years. One more case study, the Community College of Denver. They were seeing a 23% rate of MELT, and they decided that's unacceptable. Let's get to the bottom of this. So they decided to interview students to find out why, and found out that the biggest reason for students not coming to campus in the fall was that they couldn't pay their tuition fees. But they also found that many of those students also didn't complete the financial paperwork, the financial aid paperwork that they were given during orientation. So CCD decided then to completely restructure their orientation and shifted their goal from enrollment ready to financially ready. So instead of giving students all information at once, they sent information and paperwork when it was timely and relevant. They provided students with customized onboarding checklists, and they assigned each student a case manager to check in, help with, and follow up on financial aid paperwork. So this led to an 8.6% decrease in MELT over just 1 school year. And lastly, you want to create spaces for students to interact. If students have the chance to form positive relationships before arriving in the fall, this will go a long way in helping students feel safe and welcome and make them want to come to campus. So giving students spaces to interact can be powerful in helping students do this. And this can be done in a variety of ways. A lot of institutions have Facebook groups where students can interact. Some campuses where students commonly live on campus create roommate groups within their online housing applications. As you can see in this screenshot, this is from Boston University. Once students fill out the housing application, they can create groups with potential roommates to get to know each other before choosing to become roommates. And even if they don't choose to become roommates, they've still made a connection with another person that they can then meet in person in the fall. Okay, so that was a lot of tips for things that you could be doing over the summer, but support, of course, should not stop once students arrive to campus in the fall. Institutions are really great about providing tons of resources to students when on campus. You know, they have access to librarians, writing centers, advisors, mental health support, a million different resources. But when students get to campus, they're bombarded with information about their courses, clubs they can join, activities they can be a part of, dining halls, housing rules, and so much more. And some of these great resources may get lost in translation. So available resources need to be advertised in high visibility areas all throughout the year. So if students don't know about a resource, they won't take advantage of it. One way that you could share these resources is recruiting your resident advisors to create bulletin boards in residence halls. So you can see some fun bulletin boards there on the screen. And you can keep those constantly updating throughout the year. But you should also have colorful flyers posted in high traffic areas in classroom buildings, in dining areas, even restroom stalls. How many times have you seen a flyer in a restroom stall and you read it? Because what else are you doing, right? One last case study for you is a look at continued orientation. So orientation really shouldn't be a one and done. It should continue throughout a student's first semester or first year. So this case study comes from the University of South Carolina, which is actually my alma mater. USC has a 3-credit course for freshmen during their first semester called University 101. And this is a class that I took that I found very helpful in adjusting to life on campus. I went to college very far away from home, so it was really nice to have this support. So University 101 class, according to USC, they say that U101 helps students bridge transitions with greater success, connect with peers, and access the full scope of university resources. So the class covers study skills and helps students build a connection to the university and positive relationships with their peers. So you can see some of the things off the sample syllabus: soft skills like time management and email etiquette, academic resources and policies, academic advising, campus safety, mental health resources, off-campus living. They also have a fun project called Did You Know?, where each student gives a 3 to 5 minute presentation about a campus resource to their peers. So something that they think would be very useful, and then they share that with others in the class. The class also covers financial literacy, campus history and traditions, and it incorporates a first-year reading experience, which many institutions do, and I'm going to talk more about that in just a minute. So let's look at the results of this course. So the retention rate among freshmen who do not take University 101 is 81.5%. This jumps up to 88.3% for students who do take the course. So a pretty big jump. And you see even greater results amongst vulnerable populations, like first-generation students or Pell Grant recipients. You can see, for example, first gen on that chart there jumps from 70% for students who don't take the class up to 82.5% for students who do. The class is also linked to increased GPAs and a higher 6-year graduation rate, so sets students up for academic success as well. And I mentioned that first year reading experience. So University 101 includes that in their class, but many schools also do a common reading or first year reading experience as well. In this case, students receive a copy of the same book at orientation, and then they'll discuss that book throughout the first semester. So these books can be anything. Some schools choose for them to be related to study skills. Sometimes they'll choose a fiction book, sometimes nonfiction. You can vary your type of book from year to year, but this is a really great way to create a shared experience and a sense of belonging amongst first-year students. All right, so let's revisit this scary statistic that Jenna shared at the beginning. We know that summer melt is a serious issue that impacts a lot of students. But the good news is that there are strategies that have proven to be effective. So the power to improve matriculation and decrease rates of melt is in your hands. So some of the strategies that we discussed today, one of the big ones is providing financial aid and FAFSA support in any way that you can, and in many different shapes and forms. Also text campaigns, or if you can, I'll be a little more high tech, try a chatbot out, a little lower tech, transition checklists. We talked about the importance of orientation and continuing that orientation into the first year as well. So with all of that, I am going to pass back to Amy for some Q&A.
Great, awesome. Thank you so much, you two. You shared so many good tips. As a mom to a first-year college student myself, I can say there were many times when we were a little confused or just wished that we had more opportunities. I know I wished that there were more opportunities for my son to get involved before he moved in. And so this is just super helpful. If you would like to ask any questions, please post them in the Q&A box, and I'd be happy to take those. I've got a couple questions for you guys. The first one is that came in says, when you have very few academic advisors and each of them works with hundreds of students, what's the most impactful thing they can do to help with retention? Can one of you answer that one?
Sure, I'll take this one. So I think it's really important when you have limited advisors, more limited staff, is to really utilize data to inform which students need the most support. So, identifying your first generation college students, those students are going to need more support, or students maybe that need a little more academic support, students that are academically vulnerable. Maybe they received a D, an F, or a W in past terms. These are students that are going to need more support. And so that's a good kind of cohort to focus on. And then also determining in advance of an advising meeting why students maybe haven't registered for the next term. Maybe they're having some financial struggles, or maybe they have a lack of information about what courses they're supposed to take or what the right track is, or maybe a lack of knowledge of deadlines. So really data, and then being proactive, I guess, across the board, and utilizing your resources and your staff for your higher vulnerability students.
That's great, thank you. Another question that just came in, if there's any more questions, please share. One other one that came in is, we hold a lot of workshops and webinars for financial aid help, but we don't get a lot of attendees. Is there any advice you can give for us to get more participation?
Sorry about that. I accidentally navigated away from our screen share here. Yeah, I can take this question.
Okay.
I think a few things come to mind. First, Jess touched on this earlier, but utilizing text reminders has proven to be really, really effective. Like we talked about, students have their phones kind of glued to their hands. So even if their to-do list is really long, or they've forgotten that they've signed up for a workshop or a webinar, things like that, a simple text alert is a really good way to kind of put it back on their radar. Another tip that I would share is to try and incentivize attendance. I know Jess mentioned micro scholarships earlier, so that's an option, but you can think small too. Giveaways like gift cards, like to the student union, or maybe a restaurant on campus, free t-shirts, things like that.
That's a
are
good
all
idea.
really great ways to kind of encourage students to attend. And you don't have to offer it to every student, but maybe like a raffle or something that you're advertising at the end of the session, things like that can hopefully promote attendance. And then lastly, social media is a really great tool. So you might consider promoting the webinar or workshop in advance and see if that helps gain any traction. And then again, touching on one of the strategies that Jess shared, putting these kinds of workshops or webinars in high visibility areas that students are going to see. You're probably going to get more attendance that way. You could even add it to those bulletin boards and residence halls, things like that, and maybe even encourage students to go together as a group if they're passing those high visibility areas together. So those would be just a few suggestions.
Oh, that's great. I would also throw another one out there, is just to think about timing and the fact that young students are last minuters. And so even though we want them to start working on some of these things, as early as now, if they are going to be freshmen in the fall, they're often just not there yet. So I would think timing too, just lots and lots of opportunities all the way up until literally the last second that you could actually do it, might help you get more attendance. And same with, so like we just talked about, so many students don't have the support of their parents to help them do this. So if they're not getting their parents' support, then they really aren't thinking about it probably when we wish they would. So that's another thing to think about, is just offering all of these things at times when, it may seem too late for you, or it might even seem too early in your opinion, but maybe it's not. And so moving these things around, you might find, wow, there is a sweet spot here where we get a lot of attendance and we didn't think that was going to happen at this time of year. There's one other question, and I don't know if we know the answer to this because we don't work for any colleges or universities right now, but I'll throw it out there if you guys have seen this in any of your research. Do you have any ideas on how to track reasons for summer melt? Did most of the schools that you researched, were they just doing surveys? What were they doing to find out why these students were melting, or do you know?
Yeah, a lot of the case studies that I looked at, they were just doing surveys. If you don't ask, you're not going to know, right? So I think that was a big one, but a lot of the financial reasons, I think there's like data within systems that you can track. You can see whether students have completed the FAFSA or not, right? Like you have access to data like that a little bit more for kind of those financial reasons. But for other reasons that Jenna mentioned, fear, anxiety, overwhelm, those really, you won't see any data really that's going to show that unless you ask a survey. So don't be afraid to reach out to students that, applied or showed interest and then didn't end up enrolling. A lot of times people are willing to give that feedback. So yeah, that's what I found in my research.
That's great. Okay. Well, I don't see any more questions. So again, here's our social media channels. This is recorded. We will be sending out an email. I did get a question if we can share the slides, and we can do that. And so we just want to say thank you so much for attending, and we hope to see you all at one of our upcoming webinars.